Welcome back to the second lesson in this beginner series for PocketSim. It's Midge here again, and in this lesson we will look at the viewport and everything you need to know about it, as well as the parameters of the objects in the simulation. So let's get started. The viewport is this main window that displays the actual simulation that your lesson is based on. It can be 3D or three-dimensional, like the simulation we are viewing, or 2D, meaning we see a flat front view only. Now, when you record your lesson, you need to be able to navigate your way around the 3D environment. We always try to keep the navigation standard throughout all our simulations, but they can vary depending on the type of simulation. For example, when you work on a simulation like this one, you can hold in your right mouse button and while holding it in, move the mouse around. This will rotate around the object that is in the middle of our viewport. You will notice that the blue capacitor is currently in the middle of our viewport. So if I hold in my right mouse button and move the mouse left and right, notice how the viewport smoothly rotates around the capacitor. If I move the mouse forward and backwards, it changes the height of the camera. There's no need to stress about this too much, as each simulation comes with its own unique set of tutorials, explaining all of this in further detail. The objects in a simulation have a certain behavior. This behavior very much depends on the type of simulation. For example, here you can click on the power switch to turn it on and off. And if you make the correct connections, this DC motor will turn smoothly in the same direction. We'll see that in action a little bit later. Other simulations might include vehicles, characters, machinery, and pretty much anything you can think of. Once again, each simulation will have its own way of navigating around the scene. But we promise there will always be a tutorial that will explain the unique behaviors for that simulation. Now that you understand the viewport, it's time to dig a little bit deeper and talk about the heart of PocketSim: inputs and outputs. At the core of the PocketSim engine, we have I/O, or inputs and outputs. Let me show you a drawing that I made before the lesson to explain this concept. Here we have an electric guitar and an amplifier. The guitar has a connector at the back that will give out a signal. This is called an output because it's going to send the signal out. The amplifier has a connection that expects or is waiting for a signal. This is called an input. You can now take a lead and plug the one end into the guitar output and the other end into the amplifier input. I have now created a connection between the two devices, and the amplifier will take the incoming signal from the guitar and make it louder and maybe even add some sound effects to it. In PocketSim, we use exactly the same concept. Some of the devices in the simulation will provide an output, and others will expect an input. Some objects expect an input, they will do something with that input, and then provide a modified output. Let's look again at a couple of examples. In this simulation, the power socket will emit electricity, so it will only have an output. On the other hand, the DC motor does not have any connections that emit electrical current, so it will only expect an input. This diode bridge here in the middle can receive an electrical current, change the characteristics of that current, and emit it from other leads. Therefore, it has an input as well as an output. The documentation for a simulation will also explain the inputs and outputs, and we will see some examples in upcoming lessons. Most simulations will have controls that would be linked to parameters of objects in the simulation. As you can see here, this slider is linked to the voltage output of this transformer object. This one, on the other hand, is linked to the transformer's output frequency. Very often, these parameters are very useful to enhance the explanation. In later lessons, you'll learn how you can also create your own sliders. Okay, let's end this lesson at this point, because in the next section, we're going to peek into the connections menu, which promises to be a very exciting lesson indeed. My name's Midge, and thanks again for watching.